My name is Mandy Arthur, your host in the Success Fast Lane. Today I am here with the master of self-mastery himself, Jesse Elder. Jesse Elder has had incredible success growing 8 martial arts schools, and they're some of the most profitable schools in the nation. Jesse uses those techniques and those strategies that he learned in building those businesses to create massive success for his mentees and the people that he coaches. Welcome to the show, Jesse.
Thank you, Mandy. That's a heck of an intro. I think we've got our copywriters working full time.
Well, so Jesse, you're a little bit of a philosopher too. You've said that in previous interviews. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of a philosophical question to begin with. You weren't born Jesse Elder. How did you become Jesse Elder, the master of self-mastery?
Okay. First of all, thank you for being so enthusiastic. Like, I already can tell this is going to be a great interview.
How could I not be with you as my guest?
Well, thank you. Here's the deal, though. The master of self-mastery kind of thing, that's, sometimes words get attached to you, and then people just kind of, they take it and they run with it.
Yes.
And it sounds cool and all of that. I would be the first one to admit that I am not a master of self-mastery. I think mastery is just like this never-ending kind of journey.
Yes.
That being said, this whole philosophy thing, I was very, very fascinated with, Bruce Lee when I was a kid, and I was really into martial arts. But I really learned very early on that a philosophy, which doesn't result in a win, in the ring, for example, is worthless, absolutely worthless.
Right.
And so I really became interested in what are those, if you want to call them philosophies, what are those ideas that once you begin to activate them in your life, you begin to put them into practice, all of a sudden you can see radical shifts mentally, just in your energy, your emotion, just feeling better about yourself. But then that is not enough. The whole personal development world is full of people just going, thumbs up, high five, buddy,
yes.
Everything's great, I'm a freaking unicorn, life is awesome. That makes me want to throw up in my mouth a little bit, because it's like that idea, just feel good. If it doesn't affect your behavior and give you a new result, then it's really just kind of a sedative. Yeah. And I think that that's the last thing that the world needs right now is more people who are sleeping.
I totally agree with you. So how do you wake people up, Jesse?
One more time, Andy?
How do you wake people up?
Here's the thing. It's funny. I was just doing a Facebook post on this, that there is such a trend for people who want to change the world, or whatever part of the world that they think should be different. And that's incredibly noble, and it's also a little bit misguided if somebody hasn't changed their own world first. And so this idea of I'm going to go change the world at the expense of my own reality, I think that's screwed up, and I think that that's an activity that's best reserved for martyrs or narcissists, people who really just want to be seen as changing the world. When the reality is, to answer your question, how do we wake people up? I don't think it's our job to wake anybody up. I think that it's our job to live the most powerful, authentic, clear life that we are capable of imagining, and in the process of doing that, you can't help but be the answer to somebody's prayer.
Right.
And it happens naturally, not because you set out to go save the world.
Right. So the journey of helping others, the journey to help a million people, begins with helping yourself and becoming a great example. Is that correct?
Amen, sister. Amen.
Okay, so I want to get back to basics here. I want to know, how did you get started on this journey of martial arts? It's obviously a huge part of your life, and it's your purpose now, right? It's part of your purpose.
I would say that's accurate, although I don't actively teach martial arts anymore.
Right.
Outside of, we have a private mastermind here in Austin where we incorporate physical training as a metaphor. But martial arts is something I just got into when I was a kid. I was really interested in.
9 years old, I think, right?
You've done your homework, man. Yes. I was 9 years old. I started training martial arts, loved it, fell in love with it immediately. The physicality of it, the energy, and just kept going. And by the time I was 15 years old, I earned my black belt. I was starting to teach and help in the class, and I was very, very fortunate to have an instructor who was happy to let this enthusiastic 15-year-old take over the classes. And by the time I was 17, I told my parents, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, is teach.
That sounds like if somebody was to say when they were 15 years old, I want to be a philosopher, it sounds like the same as I want to be in martial arts. How did they respond to that?
I'm so blessed to have great parents who really would consistently and to this day say, if you want to do it, go for it. I'm sure you'll figure it out. And that's something that has shaped a huge part of what I endeavor to share now, is that we have these beautiful brains and we have this incredible imagination and courage that if we exercise them consistently, there's no way you can't figure stuff out. So my parents are very supportive, and they really said, hey, it's up to you, go for it. And so I did at 17, 18, 19 years old, teaching and training and competing, and it's the proverbial school of hard knocks, but I just enjoyed every second of it. I would not have called myself a philosopher back then. I was just trying to figure stuff out.
Okay. Well, you talked about something there that really interests me, and that's, you said that you got really passionate about martial arts right when you began. Do you think that it's really important to be passionate about something to have success in it?
No, I don't think passion is a requirement. I know plenty of people who are, and first of all, we have to just cut through the semantics here, because success is an entirely personal, very subjective thing.
Yes.
The actual word success doesn't mean positive or negative; it just means next.
Wow.
A success
just means next
thing. So, like in London, they have royalty, and it's the successor to the throne. All success means is next. And we've romanticized it and glorified it in Western culture to mean that which is wanted. But the reality is, all it means is what's next. And so, I wouldn't consider passion an absolute requirement. I think there are plenty of people who are very passionate who are absolute failures, meaning they're not happy. When they're quiet and by themselves, and it's Saturday night and everybody's gone home and they're sitting there with their own private company, there are people who are absolutely miserable, and yet when everybody's around, they're super passionate. So I don't think passion is a guarantee. I think that it is nice, but I don't think it's an absolute prerequisite.
What would you say, you're still passionate about teaching people, right? And you're still passionate about martial arts.
I'm passionate about people living the most authentic life that they can.
How does passion help you?
Passion feels good. It feels good to be passionate. It feels better to be enthusiastic than it does to be down. But there's nothing wrong with feeling down either. That's sometimes a very reflective, rejuvenative period of time. So I think
you are a philosopher, Mr. Elder.
Well, here's what I found, is that if we demonize emotions, or we demonize our beliefs, and we say, well, this is a limiting belief, and I need to get rid of all my limiting beliefs, and then I can be successful, that's actually the biggest limiting belief of them all, is that we have to get rid of our limiting beliefs and then succeed. Give me a break. This is planet Earth, and we live in an environment that's constantly changing, so the one thing that we owe ourselves and those that we're in a position to serve is to be genuine and be real. And if that means that we go through a sad time, we go through a difficult time, we go through a period where we're confused, that's actually gorgeous. That is a gorgeous part of the human experience. And we don't need to live there. You can experience that in a flash, get the distinction you need, get the lesson you need, and go, oh, this is now what I want to do.
What do you think about people's obsession with being happy?
I think it's natural. I think it's natural to want to be happy. I think there's also, if somebody says, I'm happy all the time, and they build an identity around that, which happens a lot in your profession, happens a lot in mine, where it's like not okay to be sad. It's not okay. And you know what that is? That's other people's uncomfort. That's other people's discomfort at allowing the other person to just have their own experience. And it's like for a parent, if you say to your child, don't cry, all that means is they're not going to cry around you. And all that does is violate trust.
Yes.
And so I think that this obsession with being happy is natural. It's normal to want to be happy. Feeling good feels good. You don't need a reason to feel good. You can just feel it because you can. I'm just a huge believer in personal choice, and I think that the greatest freedom in life is allowing other people to have their own experience.
You know, and I don't want to bring it up too much, but that reminds me of a Nietzsche quote, and I'm a big fan of Nietzsche, who's a philosopher, and he said, "This is my way. Where is your way? As for the correct way, the right way, and the only way, that does not exist."
Yeah.
And he also said, "What is love but understanding and rejoicing in another person experiencing the world other than we do?" And that sounds very similar to what you're saying right now. And that was a big life lesson for me. When did you realize this? How did you become so wise?
I Again, Mandy, and I appreciate that. I wouldn't consider myself wise. I would consider myself incredibly curious, and I get bored very easily. So
You're just full of good answers.
well, here's what it comes down to: the ability to allow somebody to have their own experience is actually a freedom that both people benefit from. And I think that probably came a lot for me from a lot growing up. I mean, I was growing up and watched a lot of family dynamics unfold where that was just a consistent theme that just do you, just be yourself. And I experienced firsthand the freedom of that. I remember being 6, 7 years old, and my father, who was a school teacher, would lay all these books out on the table. And I never went to school. I got my driver's license. That's the only formal test that I've ever taken. Passed it the second time. Go Perseverance. But I've never taken a test, and I was largely self-educated, and most of my education was self-directed. But my dad would put all these books out, and he would just say, "Jesse, you just read whatever you want," and then he'd walk away. And Mandy, I remember this feeling of just like breathtaking freedom. Like I can read whatever I want, and I was so excited. And it wasn't until 20 years later when I started studying childhood psychology and early developmental, if I could speak English, it'd be awesome, developmental characteristics, and I realized what a genius move that was on my dad's part to say, "You read anything you want and walk away." It gave me the feeling of choosing whatever I wanted, and yet guess who was selecting what options were available? He was. And so it was a really, that was an early lesson. That lesson continued to be reinforced as I began teaching martial arts and training and competing, when I realized that nobody was going to be able to step in the ring with me. I could train with people.
It's the same in life, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, it's exactly the same. And so you very quickly learn, and you can learn this in business, you can learn this in relationships. There's a lot of schools that life will give us to get this lesson, but nobody's going to come and save you. And you can have people cheering you and guiding you and coaching you and motivating you, but at the end of the day, you're not entitled to anything other than that which you have created, other than that which you have expressed. And so I learned really early on, working with kids, working with tens of thousands of kids and their parents and everybody, and just really developing this zero entitlement mentality where just because you've been to a certain number of classes, it doesn't mean you're going to get your belt or your stripe. Like, you have to be able to do the technique. And seeing the disappointment oftentimes that would happen from somebody who didn't do the work. And feeling that hole in your heart to just like, I know I could just give this child their belt and they'd be happy, but then realizing that the incredible damage that would create for them, and I wasn't willing to be a party to that. And so that lesson has just continued to be a part of everything that I've endeavored to do, and as we developed a business around that, and we would have occasionally a staff member or a younger team member would say, "Mr. Elder, we've got a problem." And I would hear them out, and at the end I would say, "We don't have any problems. You have a puzzle that you get to figure out, and that's what you're being compensated for, and I know you can do it."
That brings me to another quote that I love, and that is, "You will be paid in proportion to the size of the problems that you solve."
I agree.
But you brought up your father, and there is something that I wanted to talk to you about your father. Your father had a crime of conscience in South Texas, and I want you to tell us that story and how that experience impacted you and your life today.
Sure. So this is in the the mid '80s, and there's a lot of violence in Central America. My father, being aware of that, and he had traveled in Central America during the years before I was born, and so he really kind of fell in love with the people down there, and really fell in love with the culture. And some years later, when there's refugees just flocking north, this is not an economic refugee situation. These are people who, if they stay, they will die. And And he just saw this happening, and he wasn't willing to not do anything about it. So he and my mother and myself, and at the time my two brothers, we moved down and lived in Harlingen, Texas, South Texas. And we lived in this little trailer, and then right next to the trailer was this halfway house for Central American refugees from El Salvador and Guatemala, and some from Nicaragua. And that was his job, was just being the director of this halfway house. It was run by the Catholic Diocese, it was funded by the church, and it wasn't a particularly religious institution, but it wasn't a secret what was going on there. And I remember my mom came to me when I was probably about 10 years old. She said, "Do you know what the word indictment means?" I said, "No, I don't." She said, "Well, your father's been indicted for aiding and abetting illegal aliens." And over the couple of years that followed that, it was very interesting, very intense time. And I remember vividly being sitting in the courtroom, having the foreman of the jury come out and say, "Your Honor, we, the jury, have reached a verdict. We find the defendant, Jack Elder, guilty on 7 counts of aiding and abetting illegal aliens." And I'm doing the math in my head, and each one of those counts is 7 years in federal penitentiary. And I'm doing the math, and I'm realizing I'm probably not going to see my dad again. And we all have those moments that you look back on and you realize that was a formative experience that really shaped who you become, or your decisions about that shape who you become. And I realized that that's the day that I really I did a lot of growing up that day. In that moment, I thought, I'm never going to see my dad again. It's up to me to take care of my mom and my brothers. And I really kind of took this identity. As it turns out, he ended up not getting that time, and it was a very public sort of case, and this became like this real man on the street does what he thinks is the right thing. And regardless of whether or not I agree or disagree, or anybody listening to this agrees about the political implications, that's secondary as far as I'm concerned. The lesson that I got from that is that when you know something is right, and then you know that you know, it doesn't matter if anybody else agrees with you or not. And it was a very powerful lesson to get at 10 years old.
How has that changed you and the way that you operate your life today?
Mandy, I'm not sure how it's changed me, because all I know is who I am, and so
Okay.
I don't know what the alternative would have been, and honestly, I don't spend any time really thinking about what might have been. I'm very focused on what is.
Okay, so you are a philosopher, a self-proclaimed philosopher. What is a philosopher to you?
I would say that a philosopher, by the term by itself, is a very academic, largely unhappy person who wants to lord it over people with their intellect and their dialogue and their vocabulary. So, not to attack the philosophers, but Napoleon Hill was a great philosopher who also died broke. He had 0 money, and most people don't know that.
I didn't know that.
He wrote the book Think and Grow Rich. You'd think the guy would have had millions. And he had money, lost it, had money, lost it, had money, lost it. He was actually rescued from poverty by one of his students, W. Clement Stone, who hired Hill when he was in his 60s, hired him to be a sales trainer for his insurance company. And so philosophy by itself is worthless. Philosophy by itself, you cannot go to the bank, let's say you want to buy a home, and you don't say, "Here's all my wonderful philosophy." You can't give your kids philosophy to eat. You can't make love to someone that you love with philosophy. None of that matters. And so when I hear the term philosophy or the word philosopher, if I'm attached to that word, or if that word's attached to me, my request is that it's always preceded by the word action. So I would consider an action philosophy, or consider myself an action philosopher, that when we hear an idea, we implement it as soon as possible so that it can begin to yield incredible results. And many people don't like talking about results because they ain't got any. And so, and that's not a judgment, it's just that it's very easy for people to talk about how great things are going to be, and I don't have much time or patience for that. It's like, don't tell me what you're going to do. Let's make something happen today so you can look back tomorrow and go, "Oh, did I really do that?" Yes.
Okay, I am going to take us to a commercial, and we'll come back. you opened your own school and you realized that being a great fighter and being a great teacher did not necessarily mean that you were a great businessman. Tell me about that lesson and how you turned around that school to be one of the most profitable businesses and schools in the nation.
I can really sum it up in a simple philosophy that many businesses, and I certainly did this for the first couple of weeks, probably longer than that. I was really focused on the features of what I had, and that's like level one that many people operate in. These are the features of what I do. And what is the feature? Well, in our case, it was we have a convenient class schedule, and we have morning classes, and we offer all these different styles of martial art. Those are features. And I learned pretty quickly that nobody cared, that it was just me trying to do this show and tell and trying to prove to them how awesome I was. Nobody really cared about that. And I learned pretty quickly that I had to go up a level, and the level above features is benefits. And all the marketers listening right now, they're like, okay, great, I learned this in kindergarten, Jesse, where's the punchline? Well, there's a level that's even more important than benefits. So the feature is convenient class schedule. The benefit is that you can never miss a class. So if you're working, you'll still have a time to make it up, and that's a benefit. But ultimately, people don't want features. They don't want benefits. They want results. And I learned very quickly that people didn't really care. They weren't bragging to their friends about how many classes their karate school offers. What was happening is children that were coming into the program were coming in very, they wouldn't make eye contact, very shy, spent a lot of time playing games, not really engaged with their physical body, and within literally 3-4 classes, like a week, 2 weeks later, these same children, 5, 6, 7 years old, Mandy, they're walking in with their chest out, their chin up, they're smiling, they're shaking hands, they're going, hello, sir, how are you? And they're like these little, like...
And how does that make you feel?
That's why I'm on this planet.
That is an incredible story. I love that. So that is still your driving force, but now it seems like you do that for business owners.
Well, what happens is with the same, you're right, and the same thing that happens for a child when they go from being shy and awkward and uncomfortable and all of a sudden completely transformed, like not afraid of anybody, not in an arrogant or boastful way, but in a level where that child just exudes self-acceptance and self-love. Most of us as entrepreneurs forgot about that. Most adults, period, have forgotten about that. And many entrepreneurs get seduced and hypnotized into the marketing world that I got to have better features, I got to have better benefits, I got to do all this stuff. And I'm not knocking features and benefits, and that's cool. But ultimately, if we're going to serve people, we have to understand deeply what the reasons are that somebody's coming to us in the first place. And so that's what gives us a proverbial superpower, is when we can explain somebody's problem to them better than they explain it to themselves. Because when you can explain, not you, Mandy, but any of us, when we can explain what's going on for somebody in our marketing, our messaging, just the way that we're interfacing with our world, people are going to resonate with that. And they're going to go, oh man, this woman knows exactly what's going on for me. And then you have trust. Then you have a level of rapport and affinity. And when you have that foundation, and then you're giving an invitation or a solution, people are just naturally radiating towards you. So we have a whole training built around how to use these philosophies in your marketing and in your business. At the time of this interview, we just did our 20th training here in Austin.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So we have people come in, and it's a very tight-knit group. It's very carefully selected, and we put 6, 7, 8 people in a room for 3 days and just to begin to apply these philosophies in their business, and the results are just awesome. And people who, like coaches and consultants who were charging like $500 a month, all of a sudden turn around and now they're having $30,000 weekends and $50,000, $60,000 months. And that may not seem like a lot of money to some people. It might seem like more money than God. But the point is that's really what juices me and gets me excited, is when I see people taking their existing content, existing story, existing experience, and learning to tweak it and present it in a way that has all of their constituents, all of their audience going, I want that. And when they show up, the investment is significant.
So I think that we could say that a lot of people might not be ready for that and might not know what a lot of people are really not willing to admit that they're doing something wrong or that they could do better. Tell me, who would be the best fit for somebody to come to you for help in their business? Who is your ideal candidate?
That's a great question, and it's a little bit of an evolving thing because as we've continued to do this over the last couple of years, we're just constantly finding that each group that comes through is more diverse, has a wider breadth of individual experiences. But I will say that the ideal person is someone who has an existing message service product. So we have a lot of coaches, life coaches, business coaches, relationship coaches. We have a lot of consultants, not very many people who do a lot of like Fortune 500 work. That's a totally different realm. I'm not the right guy for them. There's too much profanity and physical interaction and everything else. So that's cool. That's probably not who I'm for. But for somebody who's a coach, a consultant, somebody who's an advisor, someone who's many people who are in the healing space, who are doing even more spiritual work, but haven't figured out how to allow that level of abundance to flow in their life financially. It really just takes a conversation to see if this is someone who'd be a fit. So we do applications for that, and I'm just consistent.
And that's on jessieelder.com, correct?
The best thing they can do is if they're interested in applying, and by the time this goes out, we may not even have room, and the training's coming up over the next quarter or so. But if they can go to jessieelder.com/talk with Jessie. And there's a simple app that they can fill out.
Okay, now we know that you are an excellent teacher, of course, and the greatest teachers learn from their students. Can you tell me what the greatest lesson that you've learned since starting this business coaching? What is the greatest lesson that you've learned from your students?
That's an awesome question, Andy. I think about that.
Oh, I got you to think about it. Wow, it must have been a good question.
Yeah, what's coming up for me right now is when somebody makes a decision to demonstrate self-love by betting on themselves, that's when miracles happen. Until somebody demonstrates self-love by investing in themselves, by betting on themselves, until they do that, success will continue to elude them because they're expecting other people, their clients and prospects, they're expecting other people to have a standard that they in fact don't believe in. And until somebody invests in themselves and they make their own self-education, their own self-investment, bottom line, until they say, hey, I'll bet on myself all day long, and I'll do it by writing a check to a mentor, join a course, go to a program. I'm going to do something. Until they make that choice, they're actually radically out of integrity because then they're expecting other people to behave in a way that they actually don't believe in and demonstrate. So that's one lesson that I believed in that myself.
That's being authentic as well.
Well, you can't hold somebody to it. Right, I agree with you. You can't hold somebody to a standard that you, in fact, don't practice.
Right.
And that's one of the biggest secrets to seeing people grow so quickly. Many times people will be accepted into Gamma, which is our training here. They'll make the investment, which is not insignificant, and they'll have their tuition paid for by the time they show up, simply because of the expansion of their own capacity. And they'll begin to talk to people and say, it's only this, it's only this much. And in their mind, that's true because they've already gone first.
That is incredible. So tell me, you think that obviously coaches and mentors can change your life, and you have changed so many people's life and so many people's livelihood in their profits and also their fulfillment in life, I think. Who are some of the coaches and mentors that you've had, and what sort of impact did they have on your life?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate from a really early age. I always had good instructors, and my very first instructor, his name was Reed Hobbs. He was a Korean War veteran. I was 9 years old the first time I took class from him. I was terrified of him, and I loved him, and I feared him, and I respected him. He was somebody who was really influential. And then all my martial arts instructors. And There's a few thinkers out there that I really value. Dan Sullivan, the strategic coach, is a tremendous conceptual thinker. I think one of the smartest guys on the planet when it comes to creating frameworks for entrepreneurs. I've learned a tremendous amount from some of my clients, people that I've had an opportunity to work with. Garrett White with Wake Up Warrior is he's a unique individual. He is very benevolently crazy. And he's one of these guys that learned to follow the voice and learned to listen. And we worked together for about a year. And I was privileged enough to be an architect working on his program and just to see what he's doing. I learned so much from watching him in action. Kevin Nations is somebody else who is one of these kind of guys on the fringe. You don't really hear very much from him. But I've had some conversations with Kevin that have been very enlightening, very inspiring. And at the time of this recording, we're getting ready for an event here in Austin, which who knows, by the time people listen to it, this may be well in the past, but one of your former interviewees, Grant Cardone,
yes,
and Robert Herjavec, and Gary Vee, and myself, and Jeff Hoffman, there's going to be a lot of guys on stage, and women too. And I just think it's cool to choose your peers. You can sift and select and say, you might look at Gary Vee and go, man, that guy is so energetic, so enthusiastic. I want that part. And then you may look at his work schedule and think, you know what, I don't want that. But that's the best part about life. Life is a freaking cafeteria. You can say, I want this, I want this, I want this. And you can literally customize your own lifestyle, your own life experience to be whatever it is that you imagine.
Why are people not able to see that cafeteria, and why are they not able to achieve those things that they dream of? And they generally end up settling. This is something I'm really fascinated with. People end up settling, whereas we look in nature and there's never a tree, there's never anything in nature that settles. If it has what it needs, it flourishes. Why don't people do that?
The fast answer to that is that those who are successful, those who do clearly envision and then do the work that it takes to get there, are shy about their success. And so people reach a level of financial success, time freedom, physical health and vitality, relationship, intimacy, and they reach a level of that, and then they're reluctant to share. And perhaps that's because there is a lot of success shaming that happens. There's a lot of people who feel that maybe somehow they got lucky instead of taking full responsibility for the fact that they chose this. I think that's perhaps the biggest reason, is that success is still a mystery. And I think that's why the work that you're doing here is so valuable, because you can really take people who have achieved a certain level of success, who then can say, this is where I used to be, this is where I am, this is the stuff that I did, I'm not special, I'm just the dude. And if you do the same thing, you can have the same thing too. It's not like there's a limited supply. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons why it's not more common, is those who have made it, either their ego takes over or the other way. They don't really tap into their purpose. And I think we have a responsibility to share those lessons, provided those lessons are coming from a place of actually having happened, not an article that we read that we want to impress everyone with.
I think there's something you touched on there, that people believe that there's a limited supply of success. And I don't know if you've listened to a lot of Grant Cardone, but that's also something that he touches on as well. And it's something that even Brian Tracy and a lot of people who are in the success world, a lot of them talk about it as well. Why do you think that that's such a belief for people, that there's such a limited amount of success in the world, that it's so scarce?
I think it comes back to looking at the entire world. Plus, we're so bombarded with images and media and Facebook videos and everything else, and we'll look at an aspect of reality, an aspect of the world that we disagree with, and we use that as an excuse for our own scarcity. We'll read about something happening in Syria, or we'll read about something that happened in Africa, or we'll read about something, and we'll use that as an excuse to say, oh, see, things are really still screwed up, instead of looking practically and from a real satellite perspective that things are actually better now than they've ever been across the board, financially, sociologically, economically, even in terms of environment and climate. Things are better now than they've ever been. And until somebody accepts that as possible, there's lots of reasons to say things aren't okay, and I think that prevents many people from moving forward, or even starting, is saying, well, what good is it going to do? And that's a huge part of what that's just why I'm on the planet. I was born so that I could be an amplifier of abundance.
You know your purpose, but a lot of people in the world are still struggling to find their purpose, and some people who are even 80 years old never really found their purpose. How did you find your purpose, and how can somebody else find their purpose?
So I found mine. That sounds very almost egotistical to say. I have my purpose, but it's a very private, very individual journey. I personally was experiencing a lot of pain and a lot of uncertainty, and I was trying to cover it up with external success. If I just make enough money, if I can just date somebody who's physically attractive, or that that I think everybody else looks at and goes, wow, if I can just have the car, if I can just win the tournament, if I can just do all those things, that's enough. And I started to experience that, and it still wasn't enough. And I hit threshold, and I realized that if I don't have a purpose, maybe I shouldn't even be on the planet. And I went through a real period of soul searching, and that's a big part of why I do what I do now, because everything has a purpose. Every person has a purpose, and nothing, to speak in quantum terms, nothing, which sounds woo as hell, but nothing blinks into existence without having a reason for doing so. And so for anybody listening to this or watching this, if you have ears to hear this right now, if you've got eyes to watch this video, that means you are in fact here. I mean, you in fact exist. And the very fact that you exist is proof that you have a purpose. And maybe you don't know what that is. Maybe you don't know how to language it. But that's actually really, really cool. Now your work is cut out for you. And I teach a course called 12 Rituals, which is a spiritual fitness program. And it takes people very carefully through an architecture of philosophy on how to discover what your purpose is, and then how to align a path, life, work, relationships, a path so that your purpose is continually expressed, and then plan. How do you create an action list for yourself so that your purpose is continuously and cleanly expressed? The one thing that I'll say, and I'll say this to anybody, if someone is telling you that they know what your purpose is, run as fast as you can, because all they want is your money, probably your time with their church, cult, organization, whatever it is. Nobody on this planet knows what your purpose is except for you. That's between you and God, you and the universe, you and whatever non-physical deity you believe you came from.
That is powerful. Thank you so much for that. I have one more question for you. I don't want to take up too much of your time. In a few days or in a week, you're going to be sharing the stage with some very powerful people who are leaving incredible legacies. You have shared the stage, I'm sure, with people who are leaving incredible legacies. You are leaving a powerful legacy on this planet. What would you like your legacy to be when you finally do depart? And how would you like people to remember you?
If anybody remembers me, I sincerely hope that they remember a very brief moment with this dude with a shaved head, kind of crazy blue eyes, and a beard, and they're like, oh, I remember something. But what they remember won't be what I say. They'll remember something that's alive in them. And if people remember me or not, that's cool. I'm not going to care, quite frankly. Once my time here is done, I'm not going to be wherever I am next, counting how many people remembered me in this life. So I don't want any statues or people visiting my tombstone or whatever. I am much more interested in demystifying this whole personal development thing. It's not hard. In every religion, and most of the bigger personal development brands, they actually can't tell the truth because they would defeat their entire business. And I'm really on a mission to democratize personal development. And every religion on the planet, and most of the personal development gurus, everything would fall apart for them if they were to tell the truth. And the truth is that you don't need any of this shit. The truth is that you are enough. The truth is you've always been enough. And the moment you accept your magnificence, and the moment you accept exactly what and who you are, life will begin to unfold for you exactly according to your highest desires. You don't need anything else. You don't need it. There is no secret strategy that you have to get a hold of. And many of the structures that are currently set up are very bureaucratic, they're very self-serving, and they actually diminish the value of the individual. I am very much an individualist, and my hope would be that people take one class from me and they say, I'm good, dude, thanks, bye, hope to never see you again. That would be incredible.
So you would say that once people realize that they are enough and they have everything that they need to be successful, then they would be in the success fast lane.
Nice product plug for yourself.
Well, thank you so much for this interview today, Jesse Elder. I can't tell you how much I've appreciated your time and your genuineness and your authenticity, and I really look forward to seeing your future success and just seeing what you have to bring to the world, because you're an incredible human being.
Thank you for your attention and your energy and your presence on this interview. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. Everybody can follow Jesse Elder at Mr. Elder on Twitter, and you can follow me at Mandy Arthur, and of course my company at Success Fastlane. Thank you all for watching today. Have a wonderful evening.